So today we're going to be making a press moulded plate, and I'm going to be using white earthenware clay to do that. So first I'm going to wedge the clay, and this is to remove any air bubbles because when they heat up in the kiln they will expand and probably make the plate explode. So I'm just going to be extra careful, hit it with the rolling pin, and then I'm going to roll out the clay as evenly as I can. And I want that to be between about 5mm and 10mm. And as I'm rolling it out, I'm trying to keep it as sort of circular as I can. It doesn't really matter if it's not circle because we're going to trim it anyway. So then I'm going to use a rubber kidney and I'm going to smooth out the surface and get rid of any pattern from the tea towel. I'm going to transfer it into our plaster mould. And then I'm going to use the kidney again to smooth and push the clay into the mould. I'm going to trim off any of that extra clay, and this can all be recycled and used again. I'm just using a potter's pin to do that. So I'm going back in with the kidney and smoothing it down. There was just a little dink in there that I fixed with a bit of our extra clay. So you can push this around quite a lot at the moment because the clay is quite wet. That plaster is going to be sucking the water out of it as we go. So just trimming off that extra, smoothing down the edges. Anything that isn't smoothed down and isn't blunted will become quite sharp when we fire it. So now I just need to go back in and remove any fingerprints, and then we'll move on to drying the clay. So to do this I'm using a hot air gun. It's very hot, so be careful of your hands when you're using this. And what I'm doing is I'm drying the clay and evaporating the water, and as that evaporates the clay will shrink and we'll be able to get it out of the mould. So we've got the plaster sucking the water out from one direction, the hot air gun evaporating it from the top, and this makes the clay harder and it becomes what we call leather hard, which is easier to work with. So as I'm smoothing this down now, I've got a lot less resistance. I'm not dragging the clay around the plate, I'm just smoothing the surface. And then when the clay shrinks, we should start to see it come away from the plaster mould, and we should start to get a gap around the edges. I'm going to take my wooden board and flip it over like a sandcastle and just carry on smoothing out the outside, getting rid of any little creases like where we've fixed it with our extra clay, just making sure that there's no gaps there. And then just trim it with my potter's pin again, sort of leaning on the edge to get that nice smooth. And then it got stuck onto my board, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a wiggle to get it off. Flip it over and then remove any little extra bits. And that's it, we've made our plate. So what I will do now is put it to one side to dry. This will take probably about 3 days in my studio. And then I will put it in to the bisque firing, which will go to about 1000 degrees.